Is that on? There we go. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to speak here today. I'm very pleased to be here. My presentation today is mainly going to be I will start again. So my presentation today is mainly focused on how we go about assessing employer skills and training needs in the UK. I'm going to talk about the tools that we have used and the techniques we use, and I'm also going to tell you a bit of a story about skills demand in the UK and what we can tell you from our research. But I'm going to start by introducing the UK Commission for Employment and Skills, our aims and the work we do, and also I'm going to set up a little bit of context about the skills challenge we have in the UK, which will set some of the later parts of my presentation in context. It might overlap a little bit with some of the slides that Cora had. So, the UK Commission's aim is to transform the UK's approach to investing in the skills of people as an intrinsic part of securing jobs and growth. So we have three strategic objectives. We have one around intelligence, so that is about providing outstanding labour market intelligence, which helps businesses and it helps people make the best choices for them. We also work with business to lever greater investment in skills. We have a couple of investment funds that we administer, and we work in partnership with BIS to administer the employer ownership fund that Cora spoke about. We also have another strategic objective around impact. So that is about maximising the impact of employment and skills policies in the UK and employer behaviour to support jobs and growth. This year we have 4 priorities. Our priorities are that more employers should be investing in the skills of their people. There should be more career opportunities for young people, more collective action by employers through stronger sectors and local networks, and more employers stepping up and taking ownership of skills. So, one of the roles we have in the Commission is to produce research, and our role in producing research is to provide a solid evidence base for some of the decisions that need to be taken by employers, individuals, policymakers and practitioners. Our remit around labour market intelligence is to provide robust and reliable information for our partners in the employment and skills field to use as wide as possible, and to achieve impact by using intelligence along with insights that our commissioners bring. So, about our commissioners. So, here are our commissioners. As I outlined, the UK Commission has a clear ambition to transform the UK's investment approach to skills. And that starts with the insights that our commissioners bring. So it's a key feature of the UK Commission that we are a social partnership led by commissioners. Our commissioners are senior leaders. They come from large and small employers. They come from the commercial, public and third sectors. We have senior leaders from trade unions, from universities and also from colleges. So they set the direction of the UK Commission for Employment and Skills and ensure that the proposals that we develop are considered from all those different angles from the organisations that they represent. So before I talk about our intelligence, I want to first set the scene. Why are we so interested in skills investment in the UK? So we know that skills play a vital role in performance. Research that we have done has shown that firms in the UK that do not invest in training are on average twice as likely to fail. This varies by sector. So for some sectors, it's even more important. So if you look at the hotel and restaurant sector, they're 9 times more likely to fail if they do not invest in the skills of their people. We also know that skills have a role to play in raising future UK performance. So currently the United Kingdom does have high employment, it has high productivity. But whilst our businesses are leading and world-class and we remain a strong international force, our competitiveness over time is falling. So our employment and productivity rates are falling over time. The Global Competitiveness Report, produced by the World Economic Forum, now ranks the UK economy as the 13th most competitive in the world. This represents a fall of 4 places over the past 2 years. So we know that investing in skills is a key part of raising our performance. A more skilled population is going to lead to more complex and high-value jobs, faster rates of innovation, greater ability to absorb and adapt to new ideas, and higher levels of entrepreneurship. So one more slide on the icon. So Cora outlined how we perform internationally on skills. So this is our current position on skills among OECD countries. So we are 21st on low skills, 25th among OECD countries for intermediate skills, and 13th for high-level skills. And this is what we project is going to happen over the next 10 years. So by 2020, we will have fallen in ranking to 25th on low-level skills, fallen to 26th on intermediate-level skills. But for high-level skills, we will have improved our ranking and moved up to 11th among the OECD countries. But this just sets the scene, and as Cora said, it's not just about quantity, it's also about quality, but it sets the international context of where we are relatively. So it's a picture of skills polarisation in the UK, with a continued concerning shortage of those with intermediate level skills. So we have the challenge internationally of how we're performing. We also have a challenge in a time of austerity that we haven't got as much money as we maybe have had in the past, and we can't rely on the same kind of investment approach and models that we have had in the past. So we need to ensure that investment in skills is wise. So you've heard about the employer ownership approach to investment from our previous speaker. The key to wise investment, though, we think, is providing outstanding labour market intelligence, which helps businesses and people make the best choices for them. My next few slides outline the research and intelligence that the UK Commission undertakes in this regard to support this challenge and assess training and skills needs in the UK. And what I want to do is talk through a particular example of where we've undertaken a comprehensive whole economy assessment of skills in the UK to just kind of illustrate how we go about assessing training and skills needs in the UK. So this is what our research programme looks like. The triangle kind of illustrates the kind of work that we do. So at the base of the triangle, we have our labour market intelligence products. So we have both government-facing products and more outward-facing products to individuals and employers. So we undertake things like skills assessments, forecasting work. We also have some tools that are facing towards individuals, which I'll come on to at the end. Moving up a level of the triangle, we also have our research and evaluation work. We undertake robust evaluations of what is working and what isn't working. We gather information on employers' perspectives of the skills system. And then moving up the triangle, right to the top, we have our insights work. And that really is about inputting into things like policy reviews that are being done by government, and providing compelling stories, messages, and inspiring vision on our work. So, what resources do we have and what do we produce? We have a range of research products and outputs, but we have 3 products that we produce on a rolling basis. And these really form the core of our intelligence, and they are really key to assessing skill needs in the UK. And they are key resources for decision makers. So the first I was introduced that we talked about is the UK Commission's Employers' Skills Survey. This is one of the largest surveys of its kind in the entire world. We talked to, last time we did this survey, we talked to 87,500 employers. We are just currently starting field work for the next round of the survey, and we're going to be talking to 91,000 employers. In addition to that, there's a core part of the survey. There's a follow-up survey that goes to around 11,000 employers, and that focuses on how much employers have spent on training and what they've been investing in. So the main kind of areas that the Commission's Employer Skills Survey covers are things like vacancies. It looks at skills deficiencies. It looks at retention of staff, workforce development and training activities. It also considers employers' business strategies, their high-performance working practices, and as I said, we do a follow-up survey to look at their training expenditure. So on the right-hand side, I mention a project called Working Futures. Working Futures provides insight into the likely shape of the labour market in 2020. So what it does is it identifies potential and future needs arising out of evolving industrial and occupational and spatial structures. So Working Futures is an employment database, and it models the likely future labour market prospects over the next 10 years. It's derived through economic modelling, through involving 850,000 time series extrapolations, and you can look at various different dimensions of the data. So, and finally, the third core product that we produce is the Employer Perspectives Survey. This is a smaller survey, and it runs in the alternate year that we're not producing our UK Employer Skills Survey. And this covers, again, it looks at vacancies and recruitment activity. It also looks at things like work experience placements and internships, whether employers are offering apprenticeships and why they might not be offering apprenticeships, training activity and their use, and also employers' use of national occupational standards. So it really explores employers' perspectives on and experience of key aspects of the employment and skills system in the UK. So why are these products so useful? They provide a labour market information foundation stone that informs our understanding of the UK economy as a whole, and they also provide us with common and consistent intelligence, which, when it's analysed in more detail, can allow us to pull out different trends and allow different comparisons to be made. So also, these products are done to international standards of data collection, so we can undertake international benchmarking with these products as well. So they provide distinct information that aren't provided by other sources of statistics and so on in the UK. Okay, so these three products, though, although they're our core products, they are just the start. They provide standalone information resources, and they feed into the other work we do, though. So they feed into work we do on overarching analysis to assess skills and training needs in the UK. They also feed into the creation of employer and individual-facing products that we have that enable employers and individuals to make the best choices. And I'll come on to that a little bit at the end. But there's an important role in this middle part that I talk about, the overarching analysis, about drawing together and synthesising evidence as a basis for drawing out insights and priorities for action. So the evidence base that's available for such work extends beyond those three sources that the UK Commission produces. We can bring in comprehensive reviews of the literature, analyse other official statistics. There are surveys undertaken by other organisations in the UK of individuals, and other ad hoc research that we can bring together in synthesis. Key examples of where we've undertaken this kind of overarching analysis include a product called Ambition 2020 and also the National Strategic Skills Audit. This approach of overarching analysis has also been taken at a sectoral level with things like sector skills assessments and also a range of things to assess skill needs in emerging sectors, such as low carbon sector, life sciences, and in the digital economy. So I've talked about the core of underpinning data that the UK Commission produces, and also the importance of kind of drawing that together and synthesising it to draw out insights on skills and training needs and identifying priorities for action. What I want to do now is focus in on just one example of where we've done that kind of overarching analysis and brought all that information together to identify priorities for action. So the National Strategic Skills Audit provides an example of how we've done this. It was a whole economy assessment of skills and training needs in the UK. It was undertaken in 2010. However, this type of comprehensive assessment is only required every few years. What it does is provide us with a baseline of information, which we have then supplemented in intervening years with more targeted projects that focus in on understanding the skills requirements in areas that have been identified as priorities. So the purpose of the audit was to provide a systematic overview of England's current and future strategic skill needs to inform government and key agencies, education and training providers, employers, individuals, and other key intermediaries. It was there to identify priority sectors, occupations, and skill needs in order to provide a sense of direction to enable people and providers to provide a better understanding and anticipate skill needs. It was there to encourage more informed choices and decisions, and therefore better align behaviours with desirable outcomes. And finally, it was there to also inform future investment strategies. So how did we go about this assessment? So it was a big picture overview of strategic skills needs, and this slide shows how we structured it. So we started off by looking at the labour market, the skills and economic foundation for the audit. So looking at national and regional economic position, looking at recent employment trends, the structure of employment, and also the structure of occupations. We then went on to look at the extent of current skills mismatches. So looking at the supply and the demand for skills using various different sources. We looked at things such as skills shortage vacancies, skills gaps, unemployment, and also underemployment. We then went on to look at the drivers of change. So looking at what were the main factors shaping the economy over the next 10 years and are therefore going to impact on the supply and demand for skills in the future. Moving down a level, we looked at key sectors, and we looked at those sectors that were going to be a major source of economic growth and employment and also going to have significant skills deficits over the next 10 years. And we're able then to dig down into a finer level of occupational detail, looking at occupational skill needs within sectors. Finally, all that information was brought to look at priorities for action. So where is action needed? We used a risk-based approach to consider the degree of certainty attached to the various different skill needs that were identified. There was, as I said, it's an overarching piece of work. So there was a wide range of sources that fed into such an assessment. So we undertook a national and regional labour market assessment, and the material from that included the products that I mentioned earlier, so the Employer Skills Survey, the Employer Perspective Survey, and our Working Futures Forecast, but also brought together in work from our Labour Force Survey, and from work of our Migration Advisory Committee. In addition to that, we had our Sector Skills Council produce sector skills assessment reports. So these were really asking the sector skills councils to look at their sector, look at the national data, and look at their sectoral surveys and bring that together to identify the skills needs in their sectors. And so they brought together the kind of high-level national data, but supplemented it from the bottom up with things such as qualitative interviews with key sectoral stakeholders to identify their sectoral priorities. But in addition to that, there are also emerging sectors in the UK, and these aren't necessarily well served by the current sector skills councils. So we did additional reports that looked at, we had experts and also collaboration between the different sector skills councils to look at some of these emerging sectors. So things such as advanced manufacturing, low carbon, the digital economy and life sciences, to really have a look at the emerging skill needs in those emerging sectors. And finally, another key piece of information that went into the audit was a horizon scanning and scenario development report. And what that did was identify some of the key issues and changes taking place in the UK and globally, and having a look at what the possible impact could be on employment and skills over the longer term. So I'm now going to focus in on just that final bit of the audit about identifying priorities. The challenge of undertaking a comprehensive labour market assessment is identifying priorities. How do you identify which sectors should take priority for skills investment? The question the audit asked was which sectors are currently most significant in terms of their contribution to the economy, and which are likely to be of most significance in the future. One of the tools we used, I've presented just here, and it's a tool that we've used since in other work that we've done in order to identify priorities for action. And what it does is identify on the bottom axis the kind of the economic significance of a sector, combining a number of different measures, and also gives a measure of the amount of the skill deficits in the sector. So what did this exercise tell us? The quadrant shown here says what the current situation was at the time. So it is those sectors in the top right-hand quadrant which exhibit both the greatest economic significance and the greatest skills deficiency. So computing, retail, electricity, gas and water, construction and hospitality. We did a similar exercise to look at the future and consider our forecasting work. So looked at those sectors that combined growing significance and future skills needs. These were found to be business services, health and social care and retail, and also financial services appeared very close to that top quadrant. But this kind of systematic quantitative assessment is just part of the story. It was complemented obviously by valuable qualitative insights as well, particularly on those new and emerging sectors. So my final slide on the skills audit, which as I said is just an example of how we've gone about doing a comprehensive labour market assessment in the UK. This just kind of gives an indication of the type of information that can be produced from such an approach. So a number of priorities were identified. So here we have an example of some of the red priorities. These were identified as high priority skills needs with a scale or of high, great scale with a long lead-in time, and they were priorities for immediate action. So for example, you see we have science and technology professionals, a need to develop skills there in the low carbon sector and advanced manufacturing. So what I've tried to show through this, just this example, is how we've approached a comprehensive assessment of skills and training needs in the UK. However, as I said at the beginning, this type of comprehensive assessment is only really required every few years. And what we can do in intervening years is target areas of research to look at particular skills needs and areas of priority. So, for example, in the Commission, we've just commissioned a series of what we call strategic labour market intelligence projects. And these are being undertaken in sectors that have been identified as priorities and where there is also growth potential. In particular, these assessments look at how technology drives skill change. So we're looking at digital and creative, advanced manufacturing, construction, and STEM skills. So that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics skills. So I'll pause for a moment. What I've done so far is set the context of the key challenges facing the UK that mean we need to ensure skills in investment in the UK is wise. I've highlighted the important role that labour market intelligence plays in identifying the skills requirements and training needs at a macro level in the UK. I've also discussed some of the products that the UK Commission provides in this regard and focused on an example of where we've done a comprehensive labour market assessment. What I'd like to finish by doing is bringing to life some of this work. So my final few slides just present one of the many stories we can tell from the research that we've done. Some of the data that I refer to in my next few slides also provide some of the rationale that's been used for things such as the employer ownership policy development. So, firstly, we ask the question, are businesses investing wisely in skills? There are 2.3 million establishments across the UK that were in scope for this survey. And what we find is 59% of them train, but 41% of employers in the UK are not training. Of those that are training, 8% don't know if they want to do more training, but 29% of those training would actually like to do more training. And 23% are finding that the current training they're doing is meeting their needs. Of those that do not train, 26% say they've no training needs, but 15% or 0.3 million of employers have got a training need, but then finding that there are barriers to training. So that kind of offers a key challenge. So training investment we find over time is holding up at time of recession, but there's 44% of businesses here that are wanting to train or train more. So a key question is, how do we support this desire to training? In terms of the kind of barriers that the survey identified, we found that cost was a key barrier, but also there was a lack of time and a lack of information about what was available to them. In addition, we might want to think about that 26% that say they've no training need. Is this right, or is it complacency? What does it say about the level of ambition of those employers in the UK? So, other messages from the survey. Cora talked about some of the investment funds that we had, and that's what government's spending on training. But in fact, across the UK, employers are spending 49 billion was spent on training in the 12 months prior to the survey. Half of this employer spend on training was on the direct costs of training. So that's 2.8 billion was counted as fees that employers were paying directly to providers. The other half of it was on the direct costs of training, but only 2.8 billion was fees to the providers. The other half of the spend on training by employers was the wages of those being trained. So I think the key message here is employers are investing significant sums of money in training in the UK, in addition to the investment that they're able to draw on for public training. We talked a lot in the first presentation about qualifications, but in fact, although employers are reporting significant investment sums on training, only 12% of employees were being trained towards a qualification in the 12 months prior to the survey. So this raises questions and challenges. Does it reflect the quality of existing training and qualifications in the UK, or are current qualifications and training not actually meeting the needs of employers? So what other messages can we tell on training from the survey? A key message that comes out from the survey is that sectors matter. There is a strong sectoral dimension to the training trends we see from the survey. So we see that the vast majority of businesses in health and social care, for example, are providing training. Whereas you look at, for example, construction, and the proportion training is only just over half. And this is despite relatively high levels of legislation in construction. Regulation is also a key driver of the investment in the energy sector, which has got a high level of training. So some of these sectoral differences in skills investment become more concerning when we consider where future job growth is coming from as well. So that's something that I want to come on to a little bit later in my presentation, because when you look at where the new jobs are being created and then you look at where training is happening, there is a mismatch there in some cases. Other messages from the survey are that geography does matter. So although in the UK there is very little difference between our UK nations, between England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, actually at a much finer level of geography there are quite substantial differences. So for example, I've shown here the variation that we have within London. So you see that areas in the north of London are tending to train their staff more, and areas in the south of London not as much. We also find that size matters when it comes to training. As we move to the right-hand side of this chart, we see that as employer size increases, so does the incidence of training, as you might expect. But there are other things that we can tell from the survey. So we know from the survey that smaller establishments are spending less overall and training less overall than larger employment. But what the survey also shows is that where smaller employers are training their employees, they are actually spending more per employee than their larger businesses. But then in terms of barriers, they also have higher training costs in terms of management of training, but they are more likely than the larger establishments to provide on-the-job training rather than going out to the market. They are also less likely to train towards a qualification. So another source of information we have at the UK Commission is our UK Commission's Employee Perspective Survey. And this provides more information about the types of activities of employers. So this slide considers internal training, which is training delivered by employers themselves, and external training, which is training delivered by organisations external to the employer. And what this slide shows us is that there are in fact two markets for skills provision in the UK. There is a public system and the private system. So while external training is nearly offered by half of employers, so 47% are offering external training, 40% are using private providers, and 14% are using public providers. So this shows that a two-tier training market has developed in the UK. So in effect, we have a publicly funded system, which is driven by qualifications, and then we also have this private system that employers believe is better meeting their needs in terms of rapidly evolving skills needs for their sectors. Overwhelmingly, employers tell us that the driver for selecting external training providers is the provision of a relevant course. Ultimately, if the course does not fit the bill, the employers will not pay for it. This is just another piece of helpful information we have from our survey. When working with employers, who do they say their key partners are? This is really important if we're talking about how we engage with employers for these various different policies. What partners should be the main sources of advice, of information and practical help externally? Well, this chart shows us that at the moment, employers are saying that commercial and not-for-profit training providers are one of their main sources of information, as well as professional bodies, closely followed by colleges. This compares, for example, to things like Chamber of Commerce that aren't very widely used by employers in the UK as a source of information and advice. So I've not talked a lot yet about skills deficiencies in the UK. So The UK Commission has a wealth of information from its Employer Skills Survey on skills deficiencies. So this slide is drawing on two key definitions. We're talking about skills shortage vacancies, which is when a business is failing to recruit the applicants because they haven't got the right skills or work experience, and also skills gaps. So this is where an employee is in their post, but they do not have the skills to be fully proficient at their role. The understanding of the nature of these deficiencies is important as a mechanism for understanding changing skills requirements, and hence the skill needs that employers need to meet in key parts of the economy. So the key message from the survey is that skills deficiencies are not universal, but where they exist, they are persistent and they are very concentrated. So if we talk specifically about skills shortage vacancies, just as an example, we see that skilled trade occupations, so that's things like chefs, farmers, electricians, are a group of occupations where skills-related vacancy issues are most concentrated. So, and this pattern in England has actually been persistent over time in terms of the concentration of deficiency. A third of all vacancies in this occupation are skills shortage vacancies, so employers are struggling to find the skills that they need for this occupation. For skills gaps, where a current employee is not fully proficient in their role, there are concentrations in the hotel and restaurant sector, potentially reflecting higher levels of turnover, but also there are key skills gaps in sales and customer service roles. For both measures of skill deficiency, one of the biggest issues is the impact that this has on business. 61% of businesses in England with a skills gap said it had some kind of impact on the way their business functioned. And across the UK, 95% of businesses with a skills shortage vacancy said it had an impact. So the kind of impacts that we're talking about here are additional work for the staff, increased operating costs, difficulties introducing new products and services, but also loss of business to competitors as well. So we've talked about current skills deficiencies in the UK, but can we anticipate and meet skills needs to enhance learning and employment opportunities? So as I outlined at the start, one of the key products we have is a set of labour market forecasts for the UK. And what this can tell us is about the potential changes to the labour market in the period to 2020, and what are some of the implications, and we can start to think about what some of the implications of these changes are. So the chart here shows that the bulk of employment growth is expected to come in private services. It's expected to see the fastest growth with 1.2 million extra jobs between 2010 and 2020. Manufacturing, meanwhile, at the top, is projected to see a continuing decline in employment. And it's important to note, however, though, that this sector is expected to grow in terms of output. So the reduction of jobs is linked to an increase in productivity in that sector. This pattern of sectoral change has an important implications for skills investment. So in broad terms, the public sector is currently the leading contributor to skills investment within the economy. But this analysis shows that it actually has very limited growth prospects. Meanwhile, construction and many elements of the private services have low to middling levels of investment in skills, but they're projected to be important sources of job growth in the UK. So we have to consider whether these broad trends are going to act as an overall constraint to the level of growth and skills investment within the economy. So finally, I just wanted to highlight the importance of replacement demands in the economy. So my previous slide highlighted where there would potentially be skill needs due to new job growth. But also there's an important amount of job creation through replacement demands. So this is through people retiring or maybe going on maternity leave. And there's that kind of stock of jobs available that's going to be created through people retiring. Replacement demands account for almost 90% of job openings in the next 10 years, 12 million jobs, whilst the creation of new jobs is accounting for just slightly over 10%. So, I think the key message here is that there are going to be suitably skilled jobs across all occupations and all sectors, and that these replacement demands mustn't be forgot about when we're thinking about skills investment. So what I've tried to do in these past few slides is tell a story from some of our data and show how they can give us a better understanding of the current nature of investment, skills investment in the UK, but also key areas for challenge for us for future investment. And so I've just gone through one of the stories from our data. What I wanted to finish on a slightly different note. I wanted to talk to you about one of our new flagship products. So at the beginning of my presentation, I talked about some of the outward-facing products that we have. So a key thing in the labour market is for individuals to be able to make the best investment choices for them. So they need to make choices about their own skills investment, and we want those choices to be informed. So one of the things we're currently developing is taking all the labour market information that we have and developing it into a tool that can be widely accessed by individuals. So it seeks to increase the access to the high quality labour market information we have and improve individual decision making about learning and careers. The project pulls in data and makes it available in an openly available online portal. And then it's available for developers to pick up that data. The data is linked, and website developers and people developing apps can then go in and draw down this data and develop their own tools that can be used by individuals. So I flash up just a couple of examples. We recently had a day with some developers, and they used this tool, and these are some of the kinds of things that they came up with. So for this example here, they took one of our websites, which is called Rightmove, where people look for houses, and they made a widget from the tool that we've developed that provides at the side information about the job opportunities in that area and the skills shortages in that area, so people could have that information sat alongside their searches when they're searching for properties or to move into a new area. The slide hasn't worked here, but sitting underneath that was an iPhone app called Jobs Bungee that just kind of identified you could go in and look at the different areas and look at what the pay was for different occupations and find a lot of information about the opportunities for different occupations in different sectors. So this is all about opening up data. We're working in collaboration with our National Statistical Office, so it's not just our data that's feeding into this, it's national sources of data as well. And I just wanted to kind of highlight this project that we're working on, because I think it's really important in terms of giving individuals the tools to make those really informed decisions, as well as the labour market information having that important role for informing employer investment decisions as well. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Genna, por la magnífica exposición y por toda la cantidad de datos tan enriquecedores que nos has aportado. No sé si queréis hacer alguna pregunta a toda la información que nos ha dado Genna.
Bueno, aprovecho yo. Nuestro interés a la hora de que el ACCES viniese a hacer esta presentación es mostrar esta herramienta potentísima que tienen ellos de una encuesta que, si no me equivoco, es bianual, que es cada 2 años y que logra hacer no una radiografía, sino yo diría que un TAC, una radiografía, una resonancia magnética de todo lo que es el sistema. Es una herramienta que después el uso se lo darán las correspondientes autoridades, pero que logra dar en dar una exposición o mostrar una exposición clarísima de qué es lo que está pasando en materia de cualificaciones en el Reino Unido, ¿no? Creo que es muy interesante poder tener cada 2 años esa radiografía, ¿no? Yo quería preguntarle el coste de esta encuesta, si no recuerdo mal, está alrededor de los 2 millones, cerca de 3 millones de euros. Me gustaría que sí me lo podía ratificar.
Yes. The cost of the survey is around £3 million, but you have to take into account the scale of the survey in the UK. It's, the UK economy has got a lot of businesses in there, and in order to get the really fine-grained information that we want, it's obviously we go to talk to a lot of employers, so a big part of the cost is just the sheer volume of employers that we talk to. So yeah, that's the cost.
Hola, buenos días. Si se me permite, es un coste, pero es una inversión que el sistema hace para conocer cuáles son las competencias prioritarias que el mercado de trabajo necesita. Entiendo que ese es el enfoque que se le da, ¿no? Entonces, quería preguntarte, ¿cómo se difunde? Es decir, ¿tiene una periodicidad bianual? ¿Cómo se da a conocer a aquellos que toman las decisiones para que valoren en qué medida las deben tener en cuenta? Y, en segundo lugar, ¿qué incidencia real está teniendo? ¿Cómo se evalúa o cómo se sabe si los resultados de este amplísimo investigación están teniendo una incidencia en la definición de políticas, en las actuaciones, etcétera? Gracias.
Okay, thank you for the question. I could have done a whole separate presentation just about how we disseminate this data. It's disseminated in a huge variety of ways. So we obviously have standard research reports that come out that provide the high-level messages from the survey, but we also have reports that are done for the individual nations. We have the data is made available through our website. So, for example, we have tables that go down to data tables that go down to local education authorities and very fine-grained geographies. All that data is made available, and people can come to our website and download that data, download maps and reports and so on to use the data. We do a lot of work in terms of events that we do with key stakeholders such as local partners and colleges to disseminate that data and tell them that it's there and it's available for them to use in their local planning as well as national planning. In addition to that, we have ways that we draw out insights and target other audiences. So, for example, we've moved into doing things such as webisodes on our website. So we draw together the high-level messages in web videos. In addition, we produce things like infographics. But ultimately, the data is available for the public to use. So if we have an education provider that wants to look at that data, a sector skills council that wants to use that data, then they can come to us, and if it's not available on our website, there's a very short application form. They can fill it in and we'll give them all the data and they can use it in their work. And as I said, the other way that we're making the data accessible is through this data tool that I talked about, the LMI for All, which will make it more available in the future to individuals. In terms of the impact of that, there are so many different ways that you can assess impact. So we know from the volume of traffic that we get through our website in terms of the people downloading the data, we get thousands of people downloading the data and using the reports. It also feeds into high-level policy documents within the departments, and so we know that it's the results are having an impact in that way. In addition, we know that the work is having an impact through things like we produce a series of sector insight packs, and they're used by our investment managers. So in addition to the Employer Ownership Fund, we have a couple of other investment funds, and our investment managers in the UK Commission can draw on the insights from those packs and information about the key challenges from the sectors and use those in their conversations with employers when they're putting in bids, and also use them to target employers They're also used, we know that they're used in, for example, skill strategy documents done by local government as well. So there's a wide range of users. In actual fact, there are so many users, it's quite difficult to get a full and comprehensive picture of impact, actually, because it spreads so widely in terms of who uses the data.
Hola.
No sé si hay más palabras.
Sí. Solamente quería decir que me parece fascinante que un país como Reino Unido se gaste en las empresas 49.000 millones de libras en formación, aún así que el gobierno aporte otros 4 billones, otros 4.000 millones. Y claro, y eso da idea de que estamos, en este caso lamentablemente, en dos países distintos, ¿no? Un poco lo que decía antes de que sigue habiendo hay una gran sensibilidad, una extraordinaria sensibilidad en el Reino Unido en que sin formación no hay desarrollo y no hay empleo, y ya no digo a nivel de administración, sino a nivel de empresas y a nivel de trabajadores, y aquí estamos lamentablemente en un estadio todavía inferior y por lo tanto, a mi entender, seguirá haciendo falta mucho más apoyo todavía de la administración del que hay para dar ese salto hasta llegar a ser un país en este mundo del trabajo como el Reino Unido, ¿no?
I would just say it is worth remembering that 49 billion, it is a lot of, obviously it's a lot of money, a huge amount of money, but it's important to look at the breakdown of that as well. So obviously half of that is wage costs, and when you break it down, it's 2.3 billion is actually going directly to external providers. So it is a big number, but it's important to kind of recognise how it breaks down. But obviously labour costs are also an important part of training because the employees are taking time away from their job as well.
Bien, pues, muchas gracias. Muchas gracias por ajustarte al tiempo, haciendo gala de la puntualidad inglesa. Muchas gracias a todos y creo que ahora tenemos un café para tomar y para despejar un poco. Gracias, Gina, por tu intervención.
creo que incluso que estas jornadas, y usted lo ha dicho, se han quedado un poquito cortas. Me refiero a que nosotros estamos en un proceso de cambio también muy profundo en España, no solo en la formación continua o en la formación para el empleo, sino en la nueva ley de educación. Está en la calle desde hace muy poquitos días, y digo en la calle porque está siendo muy comentada, luego haré una referencia. Tenemos encima de la mesa unos nuevos acuerdos para la formación para el empleo. Tenemos, bueno, hablar de la formación dual en estos momentos en España es que farda muchísimo. O sea, todo el mundo habla de todo el mundo lo tiene en la boca, todo el mundo sabe lo que hacer y todo el mundo quiere hacerlo, pero nadie sabe lo que al final es y nadie sabe lo que al final podemos plasmar, y por eso todas esas cosas están en la mesa de negociación, en todo caso en la polémica o en la dinámica de España. Lo que no hay dudas en ningún caso es que, ojalá, nosotros también el eslogan y la meta como empleo y crecimiento, bueno, también lo tenemos nosotros, lo que pasa es que lo tenemos un poquito más difícil, un poquito más difícil. Pero lo intentaremos y lo lograremos. Pero digo que no hay dudas en que la mayor incidencia del paro, y aquí se ha dicho, está claro, del paro en general y de la juventud en particular, es en la gente poco cualificada. Cosa clara, clarísima. Y además, como decía hace un momento Chris, probablemente los empleos poco cualificados irán a la baja. Quizá en España, pues todo el tema de la construcción, la burbuja famosa, toda la creación de puestos de trabajo que se crearon, en parte ha sido motivación de que luego haya habido un paro tan importante en empleos poco cualificados. Eso hay que resolverlo, pero tampoco hay ninguna duda en que las nuevas tecnologías aparecen todos los días. Y entonces la gente de España, la gente de nuestras empresas, necesita, para su empleabilidad, para ser competitivos, para trabajar, necesita el día a día formarse en las nuevas tecnologías. Y cuando digo día a día, es que es día a día, momento a momento, minuto a minuto. Ese es un tema clarísimo. Sin embargo, yo tengo una sensación que nosotros, abrumados, como no puede ser de otra manera, por las cifras de paro que tenemos, estamos mirando a corto plazo y estamos aplicando fórmulas para resolver un tema grave que indudablemente tenemos, y estamos perdiendo un poco la perspectiva de que desde luego hay que tomar ese tipo de medidas. Naturalmente, como no, el problema es el problema y el problema inmediato es el primero, y el paro desde luego. Pero, sin embargo, también a la vez hay que estar mirando a largo plazo, y hay que instituir enseñanzas para el futuro más cercanas a la competitividad, más cercanas a las empresas, más cercanas a lo que quieren las empresas o la administración. Me da exactamente igual el mercado de trabajo que haya en España. Y creo que en España estamos perdiendo un poco el tiempo y la perspectiva en la que, por ejemplo, en el debate que hablaba hace un momento sobre la ley de educación, estamos discutiendo mucho más si se le da valor a la religión o no se le da valor a la religión, o si la lengua hay que enseñar esta o la otra, desde un punto de vista político, en vez de verlo desde un punto de vista de rentabilidad personal de cada una de las personas que están aprendiendo. El poner en duda que el español tiene que conocerlo profundamente todo el mundo en España es que es una barbaridad. Es simplemente, y lo digo ya no como concepto político, sino como concepto personal, de formación personal de cada uno. Quizá la política en España nos hace perder un poco esa perspectiva. Alguna política, no todas las políticas, sin duda. Pero yo creo que ese tema es fundamental. Las cifras que ustedes nos han puesto también encima de la mesa, hombre, a mí es una de las cosas que en un futuro, en una futura reunión, en una futura jornada, me gustaría conocerlas, o sea, pormenorizarlas, porque la cifra es abrumadora, como luego ha perfilado un poquito. bueno, parte son salarios, bueno, en todo caso están a años luz de nuestras cifras. Y nuestras cifras, afortunadamente, nuestras cifras, las que nosotros estamos dando en esta fundación, que parte han disminuido por la crisis, han disminuido porque, por eso que decía, que se ha dedicado dinero a lo inmediato en vez de mirar al futuro. Pero en todo caso, afortunadamente, como decía, una cosa son las cifras que damos en la fundación o los números que dan, que son ciertas, y otra cosa es la cifra que realmente se gasta en España en formación. Afortunadamente las empresas, y sobre todo las grandes y medianas empresas, dedican a formación mucho más de lo que se financian con las cifras que en formación estamos, que pagamos, que les complementamos para su formación. Bien, todas esas cosas es estupendo que se traten, es estupendo el intercambiar esas experiencias. Nosotros tenemos buenas experiencias, muy ricas, que han dado un buen resultado en mucho tiempo, que quizá no perduran en el tiempo, las cosas hay que cambiarlas día a día y en ello estamos en estos momentos, como he empezado diciendo. Y termino. Vuelvo a dar las gracias a la Embajada Británica por su esfuerzo y por habernos ayudado a nuestras labores. Tendremos muy en cuenta sus enseñanzas, sus conocimientos, lo que nos han transmitido. Y nada más, termino simplemente dándole las gracias a los traductores, a las traductoras que nos han facilitado la vida. Si yo fuera traductor, me gustaría tener una persona como Chris para traducirle, porque realmente debe ser una gozada, y no es una gozada traducirme a mí, que hablo demasiado deprisa, perdón por ello. Muchas gracias a todos. Muy bien.